and welcome to Adamant Lives Reviews. Since this is not exactly the most famous British spy show made in the 60s, here's a few details. Adamant is Victorian England's greatest spy / vigilante / superhero, and he's frozen by his nemesis, the Face, only to wake up and continue his war against crime in the swinging 60s. Sound familiar? I'm not surprised. It was one of the inspirations for Austin Powers. It was also the series that 80s pop star Adamant borrowed his name from. His look inspired the Third Doctors, and he recently appeared in Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 1969. It was created by Verity Lambert and Sidney Newman after they stopped working on a much more famous little British TV show called Doctor Who, and like Doctor Who, I'm afraid that some of the series has been lost forever. Why? Because in the 70s, the BBC had a funny concept of archiving its old programmes. It involved setting fire to them. There were 2 series, but most of the second is lost. Right now, I don't know if I'll do all the episodes in a row or take a break somewhere in the middle to review something else like Hex, so no one gets bored with the 1960s action. Anyway, onto the show, and its intro. The best James Bond theme and intro that never was.
Bold as a knight in white armor, cold as a shot from a gun. If you should look for a man who loves danger, to whom love is a stranger, this man is the one.
Every James Bond theme since GoldenEye, you just got served by a 45-year-old TV show. The subtitle says that it's 1902, just in case we looked at the decor and thought it was 1903. And a castle at Windsor. Could that be Windsor Castle? Or is that a bit too obvious? At the Imperial Castle Estate, Adam is attending an Imperial Ball of State and doing an Imperial Waltz of State with his fiancée Louise, and he is the exact point where badass, cheesiness, English, and rich meet.
Louise, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever met. You're the only one to whom I have ever given my heart. But alas, dear Louise, I'm afraid I just cannot ask you to be mine. You see, my love for you could be used as a weapon to destroy me by the enemies of England. My life is fraught with danger each day and night. Alas, Louise, my resolve is as blue steel.
Adam sees a guy entering the party illegally, so the man has to die. This is a kids' show, by the way.
Excuse me, would you? Just for a moment.
In a wrestling match, nobody fights like Gaston.
For there's no one as burly and brawny.
As you see, I've got biceps to spare.
Having defeated both the men without breaking a sweat, and having established that the man is invading a party run by the king, Adam decides that letting the police question him about what the fuck he and his friend were doing is for pussies.
I give you a choice. Either death at the hands of His Majesty's executioner, or... Thank you.
I salute you, Adamant.
Good Lord.
2 dead in 3 minutes, 1 by suicide, pushed into it by the hero. They don't make kids shows like this anymore.
Who's that man?
He was a man of courage and honor, but he was about to assassinate His Majesty.
Good heavens.
How do you know? Letting him jump to his death isn't exactly the same as questioning him. But I suppose Edward VII wasn't exactly Mr. Popularity. Adam receives a message telling him to find Louise at a house in London. Yes, obvious trap is obvious, but no one expected it to be in the Munsters house. A villain is dragging Louise upstairs, and Adam gets momentarily distracted by a dwarf that he doesn't even bother to kill. I suppose there's no sport in dwarf killing. Finally, they capture Adam by way of the old trick door opening into a dark void and then capturing the hero in a net by making him follow his kidnapped girlfriend trick. The bastards! So he's captured by his nemesis, the Face, otherwise known as the Imperial Prototype Minion of State.
Now I have you, and I intend to keep you.
He also sounds like a classic Doctor Who ice warrior, which just drives Louise wild with desire, because she's actually working with him. The Face then uses his Imperial plot device of state to freeze Adam in a block of ice, which over 60 years later is found during the dynamiting of a building site.
Yeah.
Look! Look! It's a man in a block of ice!
Ice that survives dynamiting and being at room temperature. What amazing thing can they use to rescue him from that? Oh, nothing that's interesting enough for us to see. Great, thanks a lot. There's a minor media shitstorm about the Iceman and whether it's the legendary hero Adamant or not. This government guy doesn't believe it's him.
Well, he's obviously an imposter. That visiting card and those clothes. I think it's all just a current part of the craze for Art Nouveau.
Yes, clearly one thing that Art Nouveau was famous for was freezing people for fun. That and being an architectural style. One that was out of fashion by the 60s. Adam, meanwhile, has managed an escape of Houdini proportions. He's still half drugged and yet has managed to sedate the doctor who was about to sedate him and escape the hospital room even though the only door was right beside the two men who were just talking. Anyway, he has the time to talk an elderly woman into stabbing anyone who follows him.
And if any of the murderous gang approach you, do not be afraid to use this. Remember, they are your country's enemies.
But I wouldn't know her.
Please, please, not another word. There's not much time.
He escapes the hospital and walks underneath something that I'm sure was used to terraform Mars in Total Recall, and finds himself in a strange world. Now, a British spy / hero frozen and revived in the future / present day. What does this remind you of? If you say Captain America, smack yourself. I'll remind you. In a haze of lights and sounds and 1960s-ness, Adam wanders into the London Underground and is baffled by the escalators.
What is this place?
Now, the London Underground existed long before 1902, and London's first escalators were installed in the 1890s, so I'm going to put this down to the drugs and shit. What's brilliant about this whole sequence is that they filmed it without warning the public, so the confused look he gets are completely genuine. But I suppose they could be looking at the cameras. Of course, because it's the 1960s and they were amazing, he passes posters for strippers, and is accosted by a hooker who wants a taste of that elegant British steel. He's been followed around by the second main character, Georgina Jones, who Adam manages to mistake for a boy.
I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. I'm not a boy, I'm a girl.
Adam possibly is the same sex recognition software as the average Shakespeare character. Or it's just because of the drugs and shit. See, Marvel Studios, you don't need Samuel L. Jackson against a bad green screen and Chris Evans saying he had a date to have a man from the past appear in the present scene. Miss Jones followed him because she worked out who he was, so either she's the biggest Adamant nerd that there is, and possibly writes slash fiction about him and Sherlock Holmes, or he's still the biggest name in the country. Of course, that wouldn't explain why no one else who saw him in the street worked out who he was. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to assume that she used to spend her nights calling her boyfriends Adam, whether they liked it or not.
And let's say I'm a dedicated fan.
Fan?
Oh, bam, I'm good.
Where am I?
You're quite safe. You're in my room.
Your room? Then I must leave immediately.
Why?
Well, think. Your reputation, Miss Jones.
One thing you'll notice as the episodes go on, that while most characters change and adapt with time, Adam really doesn't. He hates the 60s. He thinks his era was much better and he doesn't give a shit about very much, really. It's refreshing. Most time-displaced characters end up preferring the time the show was made. Buck Rogers, for instance, still prefers the past, and Austin Powers ended up preferring the 90s. But Adam never shifts. The 60s are shit and he won't budge. I love it. Anyway, she finally makes him understand the situation.
You're 99 years old, Mr. Adamant.
90.
I've still got that library book.
So in a disco that looks frighteningly like footage I've seen from the Old Grey Whistle test, Miss Jones's grandfather, who once met Adam in 1901, gets stabbed by some gangsters out for protection money, which kind of destroys the point of protection money, really.
I still need to know why you're so sure it was the protection racket.
Especially considering that he's not very well protected, being dead and all. The guys who killed the grandfather are notorious gangsters, so the police get Miss Jones to agree to identify the killer. They then make her wait until the morning to do it and leave her alone. They didn't think that through very well. In the morning, Adam wakes up and comes to the conclusion that Miss Jones is a prostitute.
You must forgive me, I hadn't realized. You're so young. No, please, please, say no more. I'm sure you've been driven to it. And I shall make every effort to find you a menial post where a reference from me can outweigh the most scarlet past.
Wait a minute. Are you saying?
Kids shows really need more blasé references to prostitution. It would make the world a little bit sunnier. So eventually the gangsters arrive with their boss, who may actually be the mother of the woman in the Goonies. She wants Miss Jones to pretend that she didn't see her grandfather stabbed. I have no idea what they'd have her claim she actually saw, but that's not important because Adam badly needs to get punched. So the gangsters leave them to think about the threat that they kinda sorta gave Miss Jones, and Adam can't take it any longer.
He's not worth it!
Let's disagree with you, Miss Jones. Unfortunately, I'm weaker than I thought.
So explaining what's going on, and explaining, and suddenly, from out of nowhere, a trailer line.
But 1966 has a great deal of capacity for a man of my talent.
It's just a pity that the 60s BBC didn't do trailers. Anyway, Adam has but hours to regain his strength and defeat the gangsters.
I must prepare.
I can't expect you to get involved.
Can expect nothing less.
Miss Jones goes to the police, so the boss, the fat gangster, and an evil policeman follow her back to the club where she phones Adam, whose inability to understand modern things is still delightful. Anyway, long story short, Adam gets knocked out by the clearly evil policeman, and we get a flashback to the start of the episode. I hope you enjoyed that. You're going to see it a lot. The gangsters tie Adam and Miss Jones to a sofa and then set the room filling with gas. Quite why they couldn't do that while Adam was unconscious, I don't really get. Anyway, I'm impressed with the non-stereotypical depiction of a female gangster, and her plan isn't completely terrible either. Make it look like Adam, a man who the media thinks might be a crazy person, killed her and himself. But she didn't take into account that no one other than a prototype minion should ever fuck with Adam Adamant, because within minutes he's turned off the gas and managed to free them both. This leads to fighting.
Whenever you're ready, gentlemen.
Kill him.
Stick. Certainly, if you wish it.
Hey, no!
Adam is the only man who ever brought a sword to a gunfight and won. Why? Because he's Adam Adamant, damn it! Both men go down quite quickly and the boss decides to escape by going to the roof. Genius that she is. On the plus side, she somehow managed to capture Miss Jones and threatens to throw her off the roof if Adam doesn't drop his sword.
Drop the sword! One little push, that's all it needs. Just one little push.
Then I swear to you, madam, you will follow her. Kill her and you kill yourself.
That is beautiful. None of the usual hero drops the weapon and the villain does it anyway bullshit. So she does it anyway, and this leads to Adam killing her while she's armed with his sword and he only has the scabbard. Adam Adamant equals fucking badass. So that was the pilot for Adam Adamant Lives, a vintage year for Scoundrels. A great bit of all too often overlooked British TV. It's dated to be sure, but a lot less than other shows made at the same time. Partly because it's not really portraying the 60s or the Victorian. It's portraying a stylized version of both, and it works. As far as I'm concerned, it's better than The Avengers, and it's one show that I would be perfectly fine seeing a remake of. Seeing Adam deal with a stylized version of today would be incredible, but it would have to be done right, and I can't think of anyone who could play the part as well as Gerald Harper. Adam, while stylized to the fucking gills, is still believable as a Victorian adventurer, and having someone like David Tennant play him would be a hate crime against the Victorian era. Anyway, this episode has one thing over the others. A lot happens in it. One of the problems of the show is that lots of the episodes could comfortably be 15 or 25 minutes shorter and nothing could be lost. This crams about 1.5 episodes of stuff into a single one and it feels much more natural. Only one more thing to say really, apart from buy the box set. This episode had 6 killings in it. It's a kids show. How is that not awesome?